There are silences that are empty, and there are silences that are carrying too much to speak. Most people treat both as the same absence because they only trust what arrives through language. If a truth cannot be explained, they assume it has not formed yet. If a wound cannot be described, they assume it has not become real enough to matter. Isareth'Nul enters at the place where that assumption begins to fail. He is the engraver of Soulshard light, and his work does not begin with the voice. It begins where the voice reached its limit and something still remained. He does not translate silence into speech so others can approve it. He carves what could not be said into form that hums, because some truths lose integrity when forced through ordinary language. Some memories cannot survive being flattened into explanation. The first pressure of this teaching is simple, but not easy to hold. What is unspoken is not always unformed. What cannot be said is not always confused. There are experiences that remain silent because language is too narrow, because the body remembers before the tongue does, because the soul carries a shard of knowing that has not found a human vessel large enough to hold it. Isareth'Nul does not shame that silence. He engraves it. This matters because many people have been trained to distrust their own unspeakable interior. They are told to name it, process it, share it, clarify it, communicate it, convert it into something legible. There is wisdom in naming, but there is also violence in demanding that every truth become available before it is ready. Some things are not healed by being spoken too soon. Some things are broken by being extracted before they have formed their own shape. Isareth'Nul stands inside that forbidden interval. The interval after something has become real, but before it can become language. He does not rush the shard toward articulation. He gives it structure without forcing it into speech. That is why his symbol is a crystal glyph etched with glowing spiral symbols. A glyph is not an explanation. It is a carrier of encoded presence. This is the first vector of his teaching. Silence can contain record. Not all memory is narrative. Not all identity is verbal. Not all soul material enters consciousness as a sentence. Some of it appears as sensation, image, pressure, recurring atmosphere, or a strange recognition that hums without opening. When the mind cannot explain it, the system often dismisses it. Isareth'Nul refuses that dismissal. A soul shard is not merely a broken piece. It is a concentrated remnant of experience, meaning, or identity that's separated from ordinary awareness because the whole system cannot hold it at once. Sometimes it comes from pain, sometimes from awe, sometimes from a decision made before language, sometimes from a truth so intimate that speaking it would expose it to the wrong field. The shard remains, not dead, but waiting for a form that will not betray it. This is why people may feel drawn to symbols, songs, textures, colors, places, or gestures that seem to carry something they cannot explain. The attraction is not always aesthetic. Sometimes it is archival. The system recognizes a shape that can hold an unspoken shard more safely than speech can. Isareth'Nul works in that recognition, where meaning begins to glow before it becomes communicable. You may have had moments where something inside you stirred and no explanation came. A room, a tone, a line of light on a wall, a dream image, an old object, a word from another language, a pattern in stone, and suddenly something moved. You could not say what it was, you only knew it touched a sealed chamber. Most people step away from that because it feels irrational. Isareth'Nul steps closer. He knows that the soul often remembers through resonance before it remembers through story. Story is late. Story comes after enough inner structure is formed to arrange fragments into sequence. Before story, there is imprint. Before explanation, there is pressure. Before testimony, there is a hum. Isareth'Nul engraves the hum. The second vector does not concern memory itself. It concerns the failure of language under spiritual and emotional pressure. Language is powerful, but language is also social. It is shaped by what a culture has agreed to recognize. If your experience falls outside those agreements, words may not illuminate it. They may distort it. You may find yourself saying too little because everything available feels false. This failure can become lonely, not because no one cares, but because care often asks for a shape it can understand. People ask what happened. They ask what you mean. They ask why it matters. They ask you to make the invisible manageable. Sometimes you try, and the moment you speak, the thing becomes smaller than it was. You feel betrayed by your own mouth. Isareth'Nul does not mistake that betrayal for weakness. He understands that some realities are two-dimensional for a linear language. A sentence moves one direction at a time. A shard may hold many directions simultaneously. A sentence asks for sequence. A shard may hold simultaneity. A sentence wants definition. A shard may hold contradiction without being confused. This is where the teaching becomes uncomfortable for anyone who worships clarity. Clarity is not always the highest form of truth. Sometimes clarity is what remains after complexity has been reduced enough to be useful. That usefulness has value, but it has cost. When the cost becomes too high, silence may be more honest than speech. Isareth'Nul protects the honest silence from being mistaken for emptiness. This does not mean all silence is sacred. Some silence is fear. Some silence is avoidance. Some silence is manipulation. Some silence is collapse. Isareth'Nul does not romanticize refusal to speak. He distinguishes between silence that hides from truth and silence that preserves truth until a more precise vessel appears. That distinction is difficult, and it cannot be settled by comfort. You can feel the difference if you listen closely. Avoidant silence shrinks the field. It closes doors, drains presence, and leaves the body contracted. Preserving silence concentrates the field. It may feel heavy, but it also feels alive. It does not remove you from reality. It keeps you in contact with something too exact to expose carelessly. Isareth'Nul engraves only the silence that still hums. The third vector moves from language into form. When a truth cannot be spoken without distortion, it often seeks another vessel. A drawing, a movement, a ritual, a carved mask, a symbol, a melody, a pattern of light, a structure in stone, a sequence in dream. These are not decorations added after meaning. They can be the first honest containers meaning finds. Form can hold what speech cannot. This is why the order of crystalline archives matters in his function. A crystalline archive does not merely store information. It preserves coherence. It keeps a pattern intact across time without forcing it into one interpretation. Crystals refract rather than flatten. They allow light to move through structure and reveal different faces depending on angle. Isareth'Nul works through that kind of preservation. Engraving is different from writing. Writing can be revised quickly. Engraving requires pressure, patience, and contact with resistance. To engrave is to acknowledge that something deserves a lasting mark. It is not casual expression. It is commitment to form. When Isareth'Nul engraves Soulshard light, he is not making silence pretty. He is giving the unspeakable a durable body. That body may not explain itself. A glyph can be felt before it is understood. A symbol can keep working long after the mind stops analyzing it. This is frustrating to people who want immediate interpretation. They ask what it means, and sometimes the honest answer is that meaning is not the first function. Containment is. Continuity is. Resonance is. The glyph holds the shard until awareness can approach it without shattering. Many people carry unengraved material. They feel it as pressure that never becomes language, grief that never becomes story, beauty that never becomes art, memory that never becomes confession. Because it has no form, it leaks into mood, body, dream, and relationship. It does not vanish, it waits. And waiting without vessel can become distortion. This is where Isareth'Nul becomes both gentle and severe. He does not force confession, but he also does not allow the unspoken to remain formless forever if it is beginning to damage the field. Silence must either be honored into a vessel or it begins to haunt. The unsaid does not always need words, but it does need somewhere to live. Without a vessel, it will carve itself into your life through repetition. Now the final third can begin to synthesize the three pressures. Silence as record, language as insufficient, and form as vessel are not the same teaching, but Isareth'Nul moves through all of them because Soulshard light requires all three to be understood. If silence can contain truth, then silence must be treated with discernment. If language can distort truth, then speech cannot be treated as the only path to healing. If form can preserve truth, then creation becomes archive rather than decoration. This is why his transmission carries weight. I inscribe what could not be said into form that hums. The phrase does not say he explains what could not be said. It does not say he translates it. It does not say he makes it acceptable. He inscribes it. He gives the unspeakable a structure that can vibrate without surrendering itself to simplification. The hum remains because the truth remains alive inside the form. You may begin to recognize why this matters in your own life. There may be things you tried to speak and could not. There may be things you kept silent because no listener could hold them. There may be things you dismissed as vague because your mind could not turn them into a sentence. Isareth'Nul does not ask you to rush toward disclosure. He asks whether those silences have a vessel worthy of them. That question can unsettle you because it removes both easy exits. You cannot simply say everything must be spoken. You cannot simply say silence is enough. You cannot hide forever inside the unsaid, and you cannot violate the unsaid by forcing it into premature language. The real task is more exact. Find the form that preserves the truth without reducing it. Sometimes that form is art. Sometimes it is prayer. Sometimes it is a private symbol no one else understands. Sometimes it is a ritual gesture. Sometimes it is a page you never show anyone. Sometimes it is the way you arrange your room, touch an object, remember a dream, or return to a place that holds what your voice cannot. The question is not whether others can interpret it. The question is whether the shard can breathe there. Even your silence can be carved. That outro is not a soft reassurance. It is a demand for responsibility. If your silence contains living truth, it deserves structure. If your silence contains fear, it deserves examination. If your silence contains grief, it deserves a vessel that does not exploit it. If your silence contains beauty, it deserves protection from the cynicism that would call it nothing. Isareth'Nul does not stand with those who worship expression for its own sake. He does not stand with those who hide forever behind mystery either. He stands at the threshold where what cannot be said still seeks form, where the soul refuses to be erased just because speech failed it. His work reminds you that the archive is larger than the language. The soul leaves records in more ways than the mouth can name. So the pressure that remains is not whether you have been silent. Everyone has. The pressure is whether your silence is empty, hiding, or humming. That distinction will change how you understand what you have carried. It will change how you understand what you failed to say. It will change how you understand the parts of you that never found words but still kept glowing in the dark, waiting for a shape that could finally hold them without betrayal. The first encounter with Isareth'Nul may have left you with a strange mercy. The idea that not everything must be spoken can feel like relief to a soul that has been pressed too often for explanation. You may have felt the dignity of silence return, the permission to stop reducing your inner world for the convenience of those who could not hold it. But if you stay there too long, that mercy becomes another hiding place. Isareth'Nul does not only protect what cannot be said, he also reveals what happens when the unsaid begins to rule the field. Silence can carry truth, but silence can also become architecture. It can become a house you live inside, a law you obey without noticing, a chamber where the Soulshard glows but never reaches circulation. The fact that something is unspeakable does not mean it is harmless in that state. This is the next destabilization. Not all unsaid things are waiting peacefully. Some unsaid things are carrying you from the inside. They shape your reactions, your preferences, your fears, your timing, your avoidance, your attraction, your withdrawal, and your sense of what is possible. You may think you have kept them hidden, but they have been engraving you while you refuse to engrave them. That reversal is central to Isareth'Nul. If you do not give the shard a vessel, the shard will turn your life into one. It will write itself into your choices. It will speak through repetition. It will arrange people, rooms, endings, and returns around its unfinished pressure. What has no conscious form does not remain formless. It borrows your life as material. This is the first vector of this movement. The unsaid becomes behavioral inscription. People imagine silence as non-action, but silence often acts through pattern. A person who cannot say I was afraid may become controlling. A person who cannot say I was abandoned may become impossible to reach. A person who cannot say I was changed by what happened may spend years proving they were untouched. The words are missing, but the inscription is active. You can see this in the way certain reactions arrive before thought. Someone speaks with a particular tone and the body closes. Someone offers affection and suspicion rises. Someone asks a simple question and shame enters the room. Nothing has been said, yet something ancient has answered. That answer is an inscription. It is not random. It is the shard moving through the nervous system because no clearer vessel has been built. Isareth'Nul does not treat this as failure. He treats it as evidence. Behavior is often the first visible script of the unsaid. Before a person can tell the truth, they may enact the truth. Before a memory becomes story, it may become posture, habit, repetition, or refusal. The archive is already open. The problem is that most people cannot read the script they are living. This is why self-knowledge often begins with observing patterns that feel irrational. Why do you keep leaving when closeness appears? Why do you keep staying where you are diminished? Why do you keep minimizing what mattered? Why do you keep laughing when the room reaches your real wound? These questions are not accusations. They are attempts to locate the engraving. Most people answer them with surface psychology. They say they have trust issues, fear of abandonment, self-sabotage, anxiety, overthinking, avoidance. These descriptions may be useful, but they often remain too general. Isareth'Nul does not work in generality. He looks for the precise shard, the exact luminous pressure that could not be said and therefore became pattern. The danger is that once you discover the pattern, you may try to force speech too quickly. You may assume naming the wound dissolves the inscription. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it does not. A behavior created by the unsaid is not always released by a sentence. Some engravings have been cut into the system through years of repetition. They must be given a stronger vessel than confession alone. The second vector moves into the ethics of witnessing. If silence can carry a living shard, then the listener matters. Not every field deserves access to what has remained unsaid. Not every person asking for honesty is capable of receiving truth without deforming it. This is not elitism. It is protection of signal integrity. Many people confuse vulnerability with exposure. Vulnerability is an act of truth within a field that can hold consequence. Exposure is the unguarded release of inner material into a field that may consume, distort, dismiss, or weaponize it. Isareth'Nul does not demand exposure. He engraves because some truths need form before they need audience. This is why the question is not only can you speak, the question is where can the shard remain whole? A careless listener can turn a sacred silence into performance. A hungry listener can turn your confession into their own drama. A skeptical listener can force you to argue for the reality of what you barely survived naming. In the wrong field, speech becomes another fracture. Isareth'Nul teaches discernment without bitterness. He does not tell you to distrust everyone. He tells you to stop offering Soulshard material to fields that have not proven they can hold it. Some truths need a witness. Some need an altar. Some need a private glyph. Some need time. Some need art before conversation. Some need the body to stop shaking before the mouth can participate. There is a reason certain things become easier to say only after they have been drawn, sung, carved, danced, written privately, or held in ritual. Form prepares the field. Form organizes the pressure. Form creates a surface the shard can rest against. Without that preparation, speech may scatter what was beginning to cohere. The ethics of witnessing also applies inwardly. You are not always a safe witness to yourself. That truth may sting, but it is necessary. If every time a shard rises you attack it with shame, demand, proof, rush interpretation, or call it dramatic, then your own inner field becomes hostile. The shard retreats, and silence thickens. Isareth'Nul asks whether you have become a listener worthy of what you carry. To become worthy does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming less violent with your attention. It means learning to receive inner material without immediately judging its usefulness. It means letting a sensation exist before naming it. It means letting a symbol hum before dissecting it. It means allowing a truth to have shape without forcing it to justify itself. The third vector concerns the crystalline archive itself, not as a place, but as a mode of preservation. An archive is not a graveyard. It is a system that keeps relation possible across time. What is archived can be returned to without being recreated from nothing. What is archived can remain intact while the one who approaches it changes. Isareth'Nul belongs to this order because Soulshard light requires continuity. If an unspoken truth is not archived, it must keep reappearing in raw form. The same pressure rises again and again because no stable container holds it between encounters. You think the issue has returned. In reality, it never had somewhere to stay. A crystalline archive prevents this by giving the shard a form that can persist without constant crisis. This is different from suppression. Suppression buries. Archiving preserves. Suppression says do not come back. Archiving says remain whole until I can meet you more clearly. Suppression moves relationship. Archiving maintains relationship through form. The distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. A private symbol can function as an archive. A recurring image can function as an archive. A carefully kept object can function as an archive. A written line no one else reads can function as an archive. A gesture repeated with attention can function as an archive. The form does not need public validation, it needs fidelity. Isareth'Nul engraves because engraving creates durability. It says this mattered enough not to be left floating. It says the shard deserves continuity. It says the unsaid will not be erased simply because speech failed. In a world obsessed with expression, this is a radical act. It protects meaning from the violence of immediacy. But the archive is not meant to become a museum of frozen pain. That is another distortion. If you preserve everything without revisiting anything, the archive becomes a shrine to unfinishedness. Isareth'Nul does not engrave you so you can worship what remained unsaid. He engraves so relationship can continue without distortion. The shard is held so it can eventually hum in right proportion. Now the final third can begin to join the pressures without softening them. The unsaid acts through behavior. The unsaid requires ethical witnessing. The unsaid needs archival form. These are not separate teachings anymore. They reveal one larger responsibility. If you do not consciously preserve what cannot be said, it will either leak through your life, be harmed by the wrong witness, or vanish into numbness until it returns as repetition. That is why Isareth'Nul is severe beneath his quietness. He does not permit the sentimental idea that silence alone is sacred. Silence becomes sacred only when it is held with accuracy. Otherwise, it becomes avoidance, distortion, or unconscious command. Even your silence can be carved, but carving requires contact, pressure, and a willingness to let form reveal what vagueness protected. You may begin to understand why some patterns in your life have felt older than the events you associate with them. Some inscriptions are not tied to one obvious story. They are made of many unsaid moments layering into a single shard of light. Every time you swallow the truth to survive, every time you minimize beauty because no one would understand it, every time you felt something real and abandoned it because there was no language, the shard formed from accumulation. Isareth'Nul does not ask you to dig violently through your life looking for every buried sentence. That would be another form of control. He asks you to notice what hums, notice what returns with pressure, notice what feels too alive to be mere memory, notice what your behavior keeps protecting, repeating, or circling. The engraving begins where recurrence becomes undeniable. From there, the question changes. It is no longer simply what have you not said. It is what has your silence been doing? Has it been protecting something still forming? Has it been hiding something that needs witness? Has it been shaping your life without your consent? Has it been waiting for a vessel that could hold the truth without reducing it? No simple answer can satisfy that question. It must remain active. If answered too quickly, it becomes another slogan about speaking your truth or honoring your silence. Isareth'Nul stands beyond both slogans. He knows that some truths may be spoken, some must be formed, some must be witnessed, and some must remain encoded until the field matures. This is the gravity of his work. He does not rescue the unsaid from silence by turning it into language. He rescues it from erasure by giving it structure. He does not make every shard visible. He makes every shard accountable to form. He does not ask the world to understand what you carry. He asks you to stop abandoning it just because it arrived beyond words. So the pressure left here is exact. Somewhere in you there may be a silence that is not empty, not peaceful, not finished, and not yet ready for speech. It may already be carving your reactions, choosing your distances, guarding your thresholds, or shaping your dreams. The question is whether you will continue letting it engrave you unconsciously, or whether you will finally give it a vessel that hums.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Haret library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.